What is up, Raider Nation? It is great to be with you. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat reporter on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. We are here today to dissect all 17 games of the Raiders 2025 regular season, which have now been announced. Looking forward to all of those, going over with those with you. This is my sixth season covering the Raiders. I consider it a successful prediction year when I fall within my prediction one game either way. In 3 of my 5 years, I've either nailed it right on the money or been one game off. I consider those to be successful. In 2 of the years, I was completely terrible, horrible, uglier than me in the shower. It was bad. So I'm gonna believe this is going to be a good one. I was asked several months ago about why my prediction was wrong. And last year, especially, I'll address that super quick. I don't want to spend a lot of time on last year. I want to look forward to 25, but I thought it was a germane question and deserved an answer. Um, so I make my first initial predictions the day after the schedule comes out, and then I do a revised one um, at the end of training camp before the season. I've been very open. I've written about the issues with Devontae and with the lack of discipline issues. But I had already made my prediction, and I stood by it last year. I knew it was going to be terrible, as you've heard on many podcasts. People saying they heard me talk about it on radio shows. That I thought the Raiders were headed for a bad year, but I wasn't going to go back and play revisionist history. It was my prediction. I stand by it. I own it. And that's what the situation was. The when once the warning signs were visible, and they were visible early, it was too late to go back and change. So let me talk to you a couple of things before I'm going to talk to you first about how I predict, and then about the process, and then just a little bit on my thoughts on this team as we move forward. Then we'll get into our predictions. So, first of all, I have 10 criterion that I use when I look at every football game. There are variants: coaching, then I look at defensive talent and success, offensive talent and success, special teams. I look at, are there any intangibles? So I do not believe you can go through an entire season winning on intangibles. But sometimes you'll see a coach get fired who is extremely unpopular, not liked, and the team respond. Sometimes you see a very popular coach get fired and players go the other direction and quit. Um, I I've seen teams where a guy gets fired and they go out and win and perform pretty well, but it's not like you can sustain that. You sustain what you are. Emotion can play a big win. I've seen a team where a player passed away or a player suffered a major injury, and so they rallied for that player. You see that. But again, it's not something sustaining. So I look at, is there any mitigating circumstances? I look at a lot of different things. Weather, who's the home team? In a case where it is 5-5, I always give the win to the home team. Always. So that's kind of my criterion and how this goes. I will give you what I think is the floor for this team and the ceiling. So let me explain that in detail. Even if my prediction is wrong, but they fall within the parameters of what I think is a successful season for the Raiders, then at the end of the year, it's how I rate it. Last year was not a success. It was a terrible disappointment and a colossal failure for the team, period. There's no other way to get around it, no other way to talk about it. It is what it is. Having established that, I will go through my predictions and then tell you what I think is the ceiling and what is the floor. And if they fall within that, I'll explain why I think it's successful. So The Raiders start the season in a very unique way. They head out to New England to take on the Patriots. Now, one of my 10 criterion is travel. Anytime a team goes east or comes west, that is a humongous benefit for the team that they're facing. Now, I want to make one point really clear. I love what the Patriots did this offseason. Everything from hiring Mike Vrabel. There's a lot of things that they did good. Josh McDaniels is a very good offensive coordinator, a bad head coach. He fits there. He is comfortable in New England, all over the place. So I think that was an upgrade for them. But here's one thing. As I'm evaluating the 2025 Raiders, I think there were several things that hurt them last year. Number one, injuries decimated the Raiders. Okay. Everyone's going to be healthy. That is the expectation of what I'm hearing from the building. Number one. Number two, the Raiders are going to address let me go back. The Raiders have already addressed the horrific discipline issues that hurt them last year. And number three, I thought the Raiders were a good football team last year. Not great, but good. And they were lacking at quarterback. They have addressed that in a big way with Geno Smith. They keep Patrick Graham and Robbie, which is a big deal, a very big deal. They're able to address the quarterback issues by bringing in a very solid quarterback in Geno Smith. They have Ashton. Joe Philbin's been working with the offensive line. There are a million reasons why I think the Raiders are going to be a better team just off of all of that. With that said, I think they catch New England at a very good time. I love Drake May. I think he's going to be a really, really solid quarterback. I just think they catch them in the first game with a lot of new things, and Josh McDaniels' offense is very, very complicated. So I think they catch New England right, and I think that they start. I have no idea. I'm not a Vegas odds maker, but I would consider going east to be a potential upset here. So I'm going to use the term upset. I think the Raiders start 1-0. A loss here would not shock me. That's why I give you a range, and a loss here would not shock me. But I had the Raiders 6-4 in my 10 sets of parameters here. So I have the Raiders getting a win here. I think that'll be a big win, and they start the season 1-0. Then week 2, September 14th, they host the Chargers for a 7 p.m. Monday Night Football game. I think the Raiders come home, and Pete Carroll has preached and talked about making Allegiant Stadium a home field advantage. Now, the Raiders team has to do that. But I'll tell you right now, Raider Nation, other than the first year, this is the most excitement I've seen in Raider Nation for this football team. And I think they're benefiting. They're facing a team like the Chargers. It doesn't have a massive fan base. I think Raider Nation shows up at Allegiant on Monday Night Football. And I think that place is going to be raucous. I think it is going to be loud. And a message is sent to the entire country as the eyes of the nation rest on Allegiant Stadium. This is going to be a brutal, physical contest. I know there's a lot of hatred for the Chargers because they're a rival. I get that. But my respect for Jimmy Harbaugh is through the roof. Everybody knows what I think of Jimmy. I have tremendous respect for him. I think he is a terrific football coach. I love the way he's building the Bolts. I like the toughness factor. But at home, with that stadium and that momentum, I think the Raiders get one here. Now, again, I don't think that they'll be favored in this game. and it doesn't matter. I don't make any predictions for betting, but that's why I use the term upset. And I think the Raiders start 2-0. This is going to be a brutal football game. Brutal, tough, grind it out. This is one of those games, it's like 17-14, just a tough game. But again, I think I think with the I think that this game comes down to like a Daniel Carlson kick as the nation watches on Monday Night Football, and the Raiders go to 2-0. Then in week 3, they travel to the Commanders, to DC, and the Raiders head east for this game. This is a team that was a quarterback away last year, and you saw the difference that he made. The Raiders just are. I don't see them getting blown out at all, but they just are not as deep of a team as the Commanders, and they get their first loss of the year. Now, I'm going to say a couple things here. I think the two biggest things that are going to hamper the Raiders in 2025 is A, there's a ton of young players. Young players make young mistakes, and the Raiders are not super deep. They're just not deep. They got a lot of talent, but not deep. And some of the depth, there is some places where they're deep. It's just very young. It's just very young. And so you expect young players to make young mistakes. And when there's depth and there's always injuries in the NFL, that's where you see teams really begin to fall. So please keep that in mind as we go through this. So the Raiders fall to Commanders and fall to 2-1. Week 4, September 28th, they host the Bears. Now, let me just go over this one. The Raiders are a young team. Young players make young mistakes. The Raiders are going to be no exception. A key turnover by a young Raider player leads to a late Bears scoop and score, and the Silver and Black face the first game of the year when they lose a game they should have won. I'm going to tell you right now, I think the Raiders are better than the Bears. But there's always, when you have a young team, there's one loss that you just scratch your head because a young player. I could see a young rookie receiver catching a ball and and fumbling, or some type of rookie mistake that cost the team the game. Years ago, when I started doing predictions, one of the things that I was told is, remember those intangibles, a weather game, how travel impacts something, injuries. And I just think that this is a game that the Raiders should win, but they lose. And guess what? They're going to win some games they probably should lose, and they're going to lose some games they should win. And that drops the Raiders to 2-2. That's their first loss at Allegiant. I only think they're going to have 2 all year. Week 5, October 5th, the Colts come to town. And the Raiders, the Raiders go to town, go to Indianapolis. They go on the road. Now they go east. Now watch this. They go back on the road, but after a disappointing home loss, Pete Carroll is going to have those guys into a fired up, molten mess. He is going to have those guys, hey, we got to go set the record straight. And once again, he displays his master motivation abilities. And after losing a game they should have won the week before, they play angry this entire game. And they take down the Colts by double digits. I think they win that and go to 3-2. Big win there. I think that will be a very, very big win. Then October 12th, the Titans come to Allegiant Stadium. And since the loss of Mike Vrabel, the Titans have really just been perennial rebuilders. And the Titans are just going to be no match at Allegiant Stadium for the Raiders. And they are going to put on a defensive showcase. And I think the crowd is going to be lit. they're going to be able to sense and smell there's a change in this franchise. Raiders win and go to 4-2. Week 7, October 19th at the Chiefs. The Raiders are a young football team. It doesn't mean they lack talent. They lack experience. And while the Raiders will give the perennial AFC champs all that they want, I think at home the Chiefs are too much and get the win. Raiders fall to 4-3. Week 8, bye week. See ya. I'm going to Cabo. Week 9, November 20th. I'm November 2nd. Oh, I'm just going to. I'm not going to Cabo. Skipping the week. It's a bye week. Sorry. Week 9, November 2nd, versus the Jags. I think the resurgence of I think the resurgent Jacksonville Jaguars, and boy, did they have a great offseason, invade the desert. It's a close game for the first 3 quarters, but eventually the relentless Raiders rushing attack and their toughness on defense wear out the Jags. Raiders win 5-3. Week 10 at the Broncos. Thursday night football. The Raiders head to Mile High for a nationwide battle in an epic defensive battle on a cold Colorado evening. The Raiders fall in one of the best games of the 2025 season. I think both teams will play relatively mistake-free. It's just going to be a great football game. And on a late fourth quarter field goal, the Broncos win. Raiders fall to 5-4. Week 11, the Cowboys. And a rarity under Pete Carroll, who is prioritizing playing at home at Allegiant Stadium. Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys win in one of the most physical battles of the season and one of only 2 losses at home for the silver and black in 2025. At this point in the season, 2 of the most significant issues of the Raiders 2025 show themselves in both depth and youth. I think the week before in that battle in Denver, the Raiders just suffer some injuries. I think the cold weather certainly doesn't help that. And it's just going to be a battle. And again, they lose only 2 games at home. But I think the youth and the depth because of injuries are why they lose to the Cowboys. Finds the Raiders at 5-5. Week 12, November 23rd, versus the Broncos at Allegiant. The Raiders' youth and depth were the Achilles heel in the previous 2 games. Not in this one. The Raiders come out red hot. I mean, the Browns, excuse me, this is the Browns. I said the Broncos, but I was wrong. It's the Browns. The Raiders' youth and depth were the Achilles heel those previous 2 weeks. But the Raiders come out red hot and fiery from Pete Carroll seemingly willing this team. Pete Carroll is going to absolutely send a message about we've got to protect Allegiant Stadium. Guys, this is unacceptable. Pete has them at a fiery frenzy, and they come out and send a message to Raider Nation. And I think beginning to end, they throttle the Browns. It's going to be a beatdown. 6-5. Week 13, November 30th, at the Bolts. The Raiders head to California where a fantastic crowd vociferously, I like that word, rooting on the silver and black. A tough physical battle ensues, and on a last-second field goal by the Bolts, the Raiders lose and fall to 6-6. I'm going to say something to you. Until the Chiefs fall off, Ric Flair says to be the man, you got to beat the man. I am not undervaluing that. I'm not undervaluing any of the Raiders' rivalries. But I think with Jim there and Pete Carroll and both franchises getting back, part of the problem in the AFC West is nobody competed with Kansas City. And with the Bolts resurging and the Raiders resurging, and clearly that's happening in Denver. They made the playoffs last year. I think you're going to see this AFC West just become a red hot battleground. I'm going to make this prediction right now. I will be shocked at the end of the year if the AFC West is not considered one of the best divisions in all of football. Okay. So the Raiders fall to 6-6. Week 14, December 7th, Broncos come to Allegiant. The Raiders get revenge for their brutal Week 10 loss. This time the Raiders reverse their fortune, and it's a young Bronco with a critical mistake when Bo Nix fumbles and the Raiders recover it and kick a game-winning field goal. 7-6, Raiders. Week 15, December 14th, at Eagles. The Las Vegas Raiders head back east to take on the defending Super Bowl champions. And if it's one game they'd rather forget. The Eagles jump out early, but the resilience of the Raiders shows through as they battle after a slow start, but fall in the land of brotherly love. Raiders 7-7. Week 16 at Texans. The Raiders find themselves back on the road, this time not as far east, but the results are the same. Silver and black display to the nation that they are an improved football team, but not yet able to head on the road and beat such a solid team as Texas. They fall to 7-8. Next, week 17. This game's going to be played on December 27th or 28th. That's to be determined. They host the G-Men. The Las Vegas Raiders host the G-Men that, while improved, isn't even on the same page as the Silver and Black. The G-Men are now matched for the play-action balance of Ashton Jeanty and Geno Smith, and the Raiders pick up a significant win at home with a bruising defense, and now they have a chance to finish the season over 500. I got them winning that, going 8-8. Finally, we come into week 18, January 3rd or 4th. At home, the Chiefs. The Raiders, young players have grown up. The pups have become dogs. The Las Vegas Raiders enter the game with a chance to finish above 500 in Pete Carroll's first season. Every day in practice, Pete Carroll has these guys lathered up to send a message for your fans about protecting Allegiant Stadium. It's going to be a really good crowd. Chiefs have owned Allegiant, in my opinion, with the crowd. They've brought a ton of Chiefs fans, and there'll be a lot. But I don't think there's going to be as many as there used to be. I think a lot of Raiders fans by this point have really bought in. Now, a lot of people are going to sell their tickets early, which is their prerogative. I don't think it'll be as bad of a crowd, I'm talking about number-wise, for Chiefs as it's been, but it still will be significant. With that said, the Raiders are a team that loves their new leader, and they're not going to let Pete Carroll down. Ashton Jeanty has his best game of the season, rushing for over 150 yards, while the Silver and Black finish one game out of the playoffs. They end the season on a very high note and enter the offseason riding on a surfboard of optimism, and they finish 9-8. Now, let me talk to you about a couple of things. I think the ceiling for this team is 10-7 regular season. I think that's the ceiling. That's if they don't miraculously stay healthy, and there's a couple of young players that don't have a young player mistake. Okay, that's pie in the sky. Would you, should you, could you? I think 9-8 is realistic. If Injuries are as bad as they can be. I think the floor for this team, the floor, meaning that I would consider at least still a relatively successful season, is 8-9. There's enough talent there to win 8 games. I think it would be disappointing that they weren't over 500, but I think Pete Carroll comes out of this 8-9, and Raider fan who are the smartest in the business are able to go, okay, we had some major injuries here, and there wasn't a ton of depth. John Spytek and Pete Carroll are building that. I think Raider fan is disappointed with a franchise its motto is just win, baby, but I think they're like very optimistic. Okay, we can see where this is going. So 10-7 to me is a little bit of pie in the sky. I think 8-9 is realistic because there's always injuries, but I think 9-8 is fair. So as long as they finish between that 8 and 10 win window, I see that. I see that. Love to hear what you think. Thank you all for joining me. Remember, we'll be back again tomorrow, going right back at those position groups. And I appreciate all of you. Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful day. God bless y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.